right. Do we have any significant number of people on Zoom?
Yeah, we have a few.
Okay.
Did we say hi to Lynn?
And BJ's on. Yep, several people. Lynn's on.
Okay. All right, let's call this workshop to order. This is a workshop for City of Holiday Island, January 13th, 2022. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let's do a roll call.
The door swung open.
I did it.
Somebody did it.
You got it, Ken?
Yes. Okay.
Fix that door.
Councilmember Dumas.
Here.
Okay.
Here.
You're on. Okay. Councilmember Graves.
Here?
Councilmember Elwood.
Here.
Councilmember Mills.
Here.
Councilmember Pittman.
Here.
All present, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I don't need to worry about calling a quorum because we're not going to decide on anything today. Purpose of the workshop is to brainstorm and prioritize activities for 2022. And I have a list of subjects. This isn't necessarily an exhaustive list of subjects, but it's a place to start, I guess. This is going to be relatively free flowing, but basically what I think we need to accomplish here today is to set some priorities for this year and maybe make some assignments, but not necessarily try to solve any of the problems here today. Otherwise, we'll be here yet at 10 o'clock tonight.
No.
Well, I won't be. All right. The first one shouldn't take very long. But I did want to discuss whether or not there's any interest in changing the term of office for the council members from 2 years to 4 years. If there is, there's a certain amount of work that has to be done.
I remember reading the statute on it a year or two ago, back when we were going through the incorporation process. And if I remember correctly, it takes an election for that to happen, which my way of thinking would be that unless we want to pay for a special election, and if we want to do this, we would have to get this included in the 2022 general
Right,
election.
that's why I'm bringing it up now.
Right.
So that
And then it would not be applicable until the 2024 election.
Right.
So I think there's probably some merit into letting it.
Is there any way to stagger them? That's my question.
No, the first election, they are staggered. You set up position 1 and 2, and you designate one of them.
So there'll be one from each ward every 4 years, but then 2 years between them.
Like position 1 would be in 2024, position 1 would be 4 years, position 2 would be 2 years, and thereafter, they'd all be 4 years. So that you'd be rotating a half of the.
I personally think 4 years is too long, as old as everybody is out here.
You talking to me?
Mr. Mayor.
I think.
I don't know what the process is though, if someone didn't want to stay on past 2 years and wanted to drop off.
Well, you resign.
You resign, but how's that replacement handled? I'm curious.
I don't know. I mean, it's, you know, the thing about it is it will get you into a staggered replacement.
To me, that's the only issue is that with 2-year terms, there's no way of staggering the terms unless we want to pay for a special election every other year.
Yeah. I think in 2022, the 2022 election, the mayor and the city clerk will be 4 years.
Right. This is
No,
just,
already,
yeah,
that's
this is just for council members.
right.
We're not gonna stagger them, 2 years is fine, but how much would a special election cost? Cause it would be nice to have them staggered, it's gonna be a little tough
It costs you
for
$4,000 or
six
$5,000
new people to come in.
$4,000 or $5,000
Hmm.
for an election. Cause they have to hire all the people and all, print all the ballots, and they ain't not gonna go cheap on it. I talked to Sherry about something we were doing, about a special election, and it was pretty expensive.
There's no urgency to do it, I just thought that if we wanna do it now would be the time, because, like you said, there's a big time lag between when you decide you wanna do it, and you're actually on a 4-year cycle.
Right, it would be 2024 before you get on a 4-year cycle, so,
So are we gonna take a vote on that at the next regular meeting next week?
no.
In this meeting, all we need to decide is whether there's any interest in it, in which case somebody would have to volunteer to advise, to do some research and advise as to what would be necessary.
Does anybody know what the surrounding cities are doing? I don't know, I have no idea, whether they're 2 or 4 years.
My guess is 4 years, but I think there is an advantage in having 2-year terms in that you may get more people being interested in running.
I think
It's
that's
only
just
a 2-year commitment.
And what's the likelihood that if we have an election every 2 years, that some of the existing members won't rerun?
Yeah.
So that you won't have staggered, but you still won't have an all new, especially this next one, when there's gonna be 6 instead of 5.
And you'll have the continuity of the mayor and the clerk too, so.
Will we?
Yeah, because they're 4 years.
Oh, that's right.
I have a comment.
Yes, Lynn?
I am not interested in 4-year terms because we have elections at large. Until we change that, I won't promote 4-year terms.
Okay,
I'm
So-
not interested.
I'm not
So,
interested. I think
right.
we'll just take it off the.
good, we got one thing scratched from the list already.
That was
The meeting was worthwhile already.
I'm not interested in the next one.
For
either,
the
so-
record, I'm against it for a whole different reason than Lynn is, so.
Okay.
I don't.
As long as you're against it, I guess, unless you just want to ban.
All right, the next thing on the list, I don't think really requires any discussion, it's just a priority for us for this year. We're already working on it, we being Lynn. And, so, that one, the next 2 here, I think are priority 1 and 2 for the city.
On the zoning ordinance, do we have a timeline? Are we gonna try and get that out of here this month, or do you think it'd be February?
for meeting in February is what we were talking about Tuesday.
Yeah, the February meeting. For the zoning ordinances. So any other discussion on this?
No, it seems to be the linchpin of everything else we're trying to get in.
I don't know what we're done with.
All right, health and sanitation and trash pickup. This doesn't have to be done in one, all at one time. We can pass a significant,
That's good.
portion of
I looked
the
at that,
health and
I looked
sanitation.
at that this morning, and that's a lot to chew on.
I think we should pick up sections at a time.
Yeah.
1 or 2 sections at a time. With the more priority ones first.
However, I would have to say that trash pickup is maybe the #1 issue with health and sanitation, with that title of the municipal code. Not from the standpoint of all of the law-abiding citizens that pay somebody to pick up their trash, regardless of who the somebody is. We have no way of enforcing that people find that somebody and pay them to pick up their trash.
Well,
We already have at least three properties where people are just piling up trash bags in their yards.
And we have others that are dumping.
Yeah, so if we don't have a mandatory trash pickup, then it's going to be hard to deal with those people. So,
We'll make that-
I'm just throwing
make
that
the
out
first
there.
one then.
When do you anticipate, you know, you gave us that 3 or 4 months ago, and I just ignored it because. You know,
The health and sanitation ordinance will be on next week's council meeting agenda, maybe not in ordinance form yet, but we will be discussing it.
Are you gonna tell us which section we're gonna?
It's the part that I put out,
No, it's more than one part. In
the
that-
parts, plural, that I put out.
Yeah, but which part are we going to work on next? Right, first,
When did you put this out?
I don't know, last 3 months ago.
Oh, that was way back when.
It said Title V or something.
There's a couple of sections in there that are reserved, and we can and will reserve trash collection and not include that in the first wave. But the rest of it is pretty straightforward, and I don't know why we wouldn't pass it all at one time.
Okay. So we're gonna do that this month?
Try.
Well, this month is kind of, I don't think we can do it this month without a specific ordinance for it at the meeting, and I think we need more.
Well, we're
time to
just gonna
discuss it.
review the text of it and see if.
But yeah, you can review it
Yeah.
this month, start reviewing it this month.
Yeah.
But it sounded like you thought it would be passed this month.
No.
Well,
I just wanna know.
since I sent it out 3 months ago, I would have assumed that people were already reviewing it.
Like we had nothing else to look at.
Okay, the next one is a more difficult problem. Police department and district court. I think that by the end of the year, we need to have a plan for that. I don't know that we will actually implement anything this year relative to that.
To the district court.
Yeah, to setting up a police department or having a
Well,
contract.
tell
with
us
them.
what your idea of a police department is.
The way the proposed ordinance was put out initially, where we had an ordinance ready to pass, and I pulled it the day before the meeting because I didn't feel we were ready. But in that ordinance, it was based on a recommendation from our city attorney. We would pass an ordinance establishing a police department and note in the ordinance that staffing for the police department would be provided through contracting with the county.
That's not enough in my mind to have a definition. Is it gonna be a department that just has a line item on the budget, and that's all there is to the department?
I think that's why it's on this agenda, that somebody needs to work on that.
Well, I'm trying to figure out what's in your head about it.
Well, my head is empty.
Well, I think.
No, let me put it a little better. I didn't have a complete plan in my head, which is why I pulled the ordinance the first time when we were going
I
to.
thought we did, Dan, I thought we talked all along, even back during the campaign of contracting with the sheriff.
We did.
And we kept waiting for the HICID to come to a meeting with us, and they said, screw you, and did it on their own.
There was a series of events that caused me to not move forward because I didn't think we were really solid on what we wanted to do yet. And the first was understanding what it takes to have a district court and who would be our prosecuting attorney. But I think we have that figured out now. And then the second was that we would have, the city would have the contract with the sheriff's department, and then that, got waylaid, because the district decided to keep their contract this year, and which put us in a position of having to negotiate a contract from scratch with the county, and, which means that we would have to put together a proposal, give it to the, quorum court, have them approve the funding for it, and then have it be approved by the, county judge. And at the time, we were in the middle of a potential lawsuit about the turnback money for, the property tax money for the roads.
I understand all that, but what you just said 5 minutes ago, was to have something in place by the end of the year. I mean, that will be 2 years into the new city that we have no enforcement mechanism.
For traffic and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
for anything, really.
Yeah,
I've been talking
Go
with,
ahead and do it.
as far as I know, the district doesn't have a contract for this year with the county.
They said they did.
No, they don't. No, they don't.
Like, we don't have any deputy patrolling right now at all?
They haven't signed the contract for this year.
Okay.
they didn't sign the contract for last year until October. It's just.
Aaron's patrolling, because I just talked to him, remember?
They said he.
Anyway,
Are there any other options like contracting with Eureka?
Well, that's why it's on the list here. It's, I
I
think it's still an unfinished project as
I-
far as
I think we need to go
exploring
ahead.
what all the alternatives are.
I think we need to go ahead and get a contract with the county as now. I mean, like next month. And then as a forward-looking thing, look into a police department for the city for 2023.
Do we need a police department for the city in order to hire or rent a cop? Is that what Justin was saying?
We need to have a police department in order to have district court.
Oh, you
Because
do?
the law says that for cities of the second class that have a police department, they can set up a district court or enter into
Okay.
an agreement
And,
to have
So that's
district court.
what's pushing the police department.
right, but
Okay.
if we can have what is recognized as a police department with one county deputy, we can have a police department within the city with probably a smaller footprint than we think we have to have, I think, and we have better control.
Yeah.
And I would like to see us do it that way. But
I think there's some practical problems with having one deputy out here being paid for by the county.
I think
or
there's
by
a,
the district.
I
and
think
one
there's a
by the
lot, I
city.
think there's a lot of problems, and I've been upset ever since they went this path, because we laid that out in our footprint 3 years ago, that that's what we were gonna do when we incorporated.
I'm just saying, nobody is disagreeing that it's necessary. I'm just saying, if we rush into it, we're going to find out that we made some mistakes. One possible mistake is, if we have one deputy being paid by the district and one deputy being paid by the city, what laws are they enforcing? Is the city cop and only the city cop enforcing city laws? And is the other cop enforcing county laws? I don't think we know the answers to that.
We haven't talked to the only way we're gonna find out is sit down and talk with the sheriff.
That's why I have it on here.
I wonder what they do if they're traveling through Eureka or Berryville, where they have city cops and they see a crime of some sort, or a traffic violation that's pertinent to the city. And
They probably call the city police
Can
department.
give them a ticket?
I
Yes.
think they can give a ticket anywhere.
Yes, they can.
Anywhere in the county.
So
But-
what's the problem?
I don't know. Until you get to court and they, and the arresting officer has to be there and somebody challenges whether or not he's enforcing a city law because he's not a city policeman and,
I don't know.
I don't know anything about it.
Do you think this,
No.
this issue of city comp, high city comp could be resolved through this, item called long-range planning with
No.
ICID?
No, I think we need to talk to the sheriff.
Well, I understand.
And I think as
Sure.
property owners, people ought to start questioning the HICID contract.
They already are.
Well, they're not listening, so they need to get louder. And I think this council needs to get a little louder with them. Just one man's opinion.
I have talked to everybody I can talk to on it. But I think, I don't know how you wanna do it, but we need to go, you know, the sooner the better, we need to have a conversation with the sheriff about that very issue and see, how he could operate under those circumstances and, you know, what services we would have, because, all this crap we're doing with the zoning ordinances and the health and sanitation ordinance is for naught if we can't enforce it.
Well, and the policeman doesn't have to enforce those.
We can't have a district court, we can't enforce we can't enforce the ordinance without a district court.
That's true.
And
I
we,
think
you
that's
know,
important.
we've come too far, we've done too much work, and we've made too many promises to sit on our butts and not get it done.
Well, I take offense to the
Well,
sitting on our butts part. I'm
Well-
down here 40 hours a week working on stuff.
You wanna throw me into it, I'll get a hold of anybody I can get a hold of that'll talk.
But
And I don't wanna go around you, that's why I've not said anything more.
And nobody disagrees with what you're saying, Dan, but when you said get it done by the end of the year, that's not right.
well, maybe there's an alternative to that, but the county set their budget last November. So if it's gonna take any, amount of money on the county's part, they're gonna have to go out and hire another deputy.
Well,
They're not gonna do that unless they have some sort of long-term guarantee that
we need to.
somebody is gonna be paying for that
We
person.
need to get a contract together and get it submitted to the.
If somebody wants to volunteer to sit down with the JPs or with the sheriff or whoever and put together a plan, then
We can't do two guys.
I was gonna say, that's the problem with, we can't get together. Only he could do that. You
and,
can, by yourself.
You know, I sit through several of those contracts with the sheriff department and the BOC, and basically the only thing that would change would be the enforcing of city ordinances. And whether, you know, we don't know at this, but, you know, if you give me the go ahead to go over and talk to the sheriff, I'd be glad, please do it, just see what, and come back and have something by the next meeting.
I think
Just to see what his thoughts are on it.
You have my blessing to do that. It may be just as beneficial, or maybe even more beneficial, to talk to, one or more of the JPs and find out what they're going to require in order to rubber stamp our request when it comes to them.
Well, we've only got one JP they got two that'd be interested in trying to do something, you know, Chuck Olson and Jack. I don't know who the JP is for, Eureka now, because I think he died or something, didn't he?
What's her name?
The only two I know is Chuck.
The lady that ran,
Huh?
the lady that ran 2 years ago.
Okay.
Can't think of her name.
I mean, I know it changed recently. Somebody was in there for a long time, and
But she was at the forum after she won.
Well, Jack would be a good place to start.
is that okay?
But yeah, I'm all for setting up a police department if we need it to get to district court.
Well, I think long range, we need to
And I mean,
explore.
when I think of police department, I think of just the processes of a police department without any personnel, because the personnel's gonna be a contract person.
But the law doesn't prohibit that. I mean, it's
I
still,
wouldn't think
it's still a
so.
police department.
Yeah, you'd have some processes for processing fines and
I mean,
working with
I-
the
you
district
know,
court.
hopefully that they would give up on that next year, but given their current track, I don't know whether they will. So I think we need.
Well, we all know the reason that they kept the deputy.
But it's not valid, and
No,
anyway. But I think, long range, I would like to be looking long range to see, what would be the minimum that we could, set up an in-house department. And I don't know what it is, but
And I would urge a closer working relationship between Dan and the chair of the BOC. There's no reason you all can't be talking to each other all the time, as well as Dan.
Okay, so Ken's gonna take on putting together a plan for how we get to district court is basically what the plan
Well,
has to be.
most of it's worked out, Butch Berry said he was amiable to us sharing the cost of district court. The district court judge,
Ramsey?
Ramsey, has said that. Justin thinks it's not a problem. He gave us a copy of the agreement that they had with, County Town. And that's all, Mayor Eureka asked for was, our plan, which you said would be that. I think I have that. Letter from Justin, I don't know. But I think we need to get something in place, man, by April. So that we can go forward with the zoning and the.
If it's possible, you're not gonna get any arguments. I'm just not sure that we're in control of the timeline.
Well, we need to find out that we're not, and I'll find out if we are or not.
we haven't quit letting Hyacinth set the timeline.
I ain't gonna,
It's
I'm
not
tired of
ISAC.
talking to them.
It's not
They
nice
won't
that
listen to it.
it's the county that's gonna be setting the
Well, I
timeline.
understand that, but there were several months you said that you were gonna go meet with Danny, waiting on Danny, and unless you've not reported that to us, that meeting never happened.
Well, we
And
got.
I don't think that was your fault.
All right, next thing I put on the list was something, I don't know if we need to consider that this year or not, but business licensing. Not from the standpoint of generating revenue, but from the standpoint of understanding what's going on in Holiday Island, basically, just having some
You have,
control over it.
are we talking about all business? Yeah, okay.
I don't know how urgent that would be. Consider
If we
something.
gonna control Airbnb, VRBOs,
That's the next thing.
business license is the first step.
That's kind of, I think, how I ended up putting it on here.
I don't know, and there ought to be plenty of references, because every city has them.
Every city has business license.
I don't know what.
I sent Dan a thing last night on, VRBO's, regulations and fines and taxing on, rentals, from various cities across the United States. And, there've been several, as Dan has alluded to several times, there's been some, court rulings, that limited what you could do with VRBOs. But there was a case in October of last year that set aside one of the main rulings and set up some guidelines on how you can do that. They can't, if it's addressed in the covenants of a unit that you can't have rentals, then you can enforce it. And even if they are, there are some guidelines that you can, as far as taxing. So I sent that to you, and I've got some more on that. So.
Was that with the state of Arkansas or some other state?
I don't know, but there's been several articles in the newspaper lately about VRBOs, I think primarily over in Rogers.
Rogers has done it,
Fayetteville.
Little Rock has.
And then there's been some rulings that you can't, other than that, unless it's in, like you say, a covenant, you can't prohibit VRBOs from being in residential areas.
But it doesn't prohibit you from requiring them to pay taxes.
Right, but you just can't say there can't be any unless it, it'd be a special, a covenant for an area.
But I think the Texas Supreme Court ruled couldn't touch them, and then the federal court, I'm sorry, I said October, it was July of 2021. Arlington ban on short-term rentals stands after a recent court ruling, so that was overturned.
Arlington was able to ban them?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I mean,
Arlington,
The
Texas?
city of Arlington's ban on the majority of short-term rentals is standing after the latest legal challenge. The Second District Court of Appeals in Fort Worth recently upheld the city of Arlington's regulations for listings on sites like B&B and VRBO.
But I think we gotta be really,
Who wants to ban them?
really careful here, because that has been a major part of Holiday Island since they.
I don't think anybody wants bans, but there's some revenue to be made.
Well, I think
There's
there's.
that like these people that manage the condos that I had, I wasn't in the program, but they pay taxes to Eureka. And
I think you mentioned that the other day.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no reason that can't be changed.
Yeah, if they're gonna pay you, they're gonna be
there's no-
paying us.
Well,
Especially those managed by a property manager. I mean, that's a business. And, there may be a distinction on renting.
I read, I think it was Rogers or Fayetteville was talking about or has raised, tax on short-term rentals like that. And the comment is that those VRBOs were happy that they were doing that because that money is used for advertising.
I think that's,
And that provided more advertising for,
I think that's all you could use it for.
I believe in Arkansas they do.
now I will comment, I had a phone call yesterday and I referred them on to Dan from some person who worked for a business that somehow they monitor the VRBOs, the short-term rentals, I suppose, maybe watch on the internet to look at their advertising and so on, and they monitor that to make sure that they are properly licensed and that they're paying the proper fees and taxes.
You think what this company really does is sell software.
Was
It
that
tells you
okay?
how, if you hire somebody to work their software, then that will be a tool for tracking and monitoring the, VRBOs and making sure that you're actually collecting your tax money from them.
Well,
So,
that list of all those cities that I sent you, if you'll read it, several of them have pretty hefty fines if they catch you not having the proper license and doing it per their
That
regulations.
would be good.
Yeah.
what some cities are doing, and I think Fayetteville is one of them, is they're putting, requirements on the structure. If you're gonna use your property as a VRBO, you have to have sprinklers, you have to have, certain, like same as what a hotel or something would have to have.
Well, I actually printed out both the Fayetteville and the Hot Springs ordinance, and they both require building and safety inspections, fire inspections, building inspections, before they grant the license.
Now, all of this discussion should really be taking place under zoning, because that's where this will be. All those requirements will be defined in the zoning
Well,
regulations, not in business licensing.
but the point on the business license is that there's a lot of revenue that we can collect that we're not. I mean, I think their business licensing, there's occupational licensing for plumbers, electricians, painters. You know, people say, well, that's punitive. It's not, because if you can kind of regulate who's offering these services, and if they're just fly by night, you know, they may not be qualified.
Yeah, the safety part, we're trying to go under,
Well,
taxing and
but
regulation.
the question for today's meeting is, do we want to develop a plan this year to require business licenses? And somebody would have to do some research to see.
I would think it would be a very good idea.
I don't think that research would be hard, given all, like I said, all the cities have licenses. All we have to do is copy and paste.
I think,
Discuss it.
Well, we're recreating tiny town zoning. Look at their
I think,
We're customizing it.
Testify.
I
I'm trying to
think
read through Hot Springs.
if we don't,
They
Dan,
made some big
at
changes.
some point in time, you're gonna start getting some phone calls about, you know, what people think as illegal, unregulated businesses. I mean, it's gonna happen.
So who wants to take on business licensing and put together a proposal? I gotta get a volunteer here first, otherwise
I
it's
think
scratched from the
isn't
list.
isn't that part of economic development?
I'll do it.
All right,
I'm already getting phone calls about people wondering about a business license, about they want a license.
Yeah.
To establish a business.
all right.
I think it's.
Go ahead.
Sir, I just want to say something. I had a B&B in Eureka for about 15 years. And before I was able to get a license for a B&B, a letter had to go out to all the immediate neighbors, and even then some, to approve it, or if so many people did not want another B&B there, they could not be done. So I was approved. Fire marshal had to pass the house. Building inspector, I'm not sure about electrician or not, but all this had to be done before I could actually advertise, start having people come in the front door. Plus, when you have a B&B, you have to live on the property.
Right.
And what I'm concerned about, I've been connected with Holiday Island since '78, starting out over there in Oak Point. What I'm concerned about is our particular street, there are now 4 and possibly up to 7 Airbnbs. It's no longer a neighborhood. It's people coming in, pulling their boat, their motorcycles, doors slamming all night long, maybe a little too
You
much to
kinda
bring
have
in town.
limited parking there too, don't you?
Pardon me?
You have some limited parking.
Yeah, I had to have so
There
much
too.
parking and all that, you know. I didn't move to Holiday Island to have it be strictly, I mean, I realized Holiday Island started out, and I go all the way back when McCullen Oil owned all this. I'm going back to when people had as a second home, come down here every now and then. And my question is, I know a lot of areas that were maintained a lot better then as they were promoting Holiday Island. Now that all the people that live here, and you take your assessment fee over all these people, there's a lot of money coming into Holiday Island. Just as another example, across the street, there's 5 lots over there that I understand, I think Holiday Island went back to Holiday Island. I have been cutting all those for 4 years. Now I know as a fact that before, years ago, a lot of areas were maintained that are not maintained anymore. So that's a whole different subject than what I started out with. I think there should be a letter that people have to sign, being agreeing or disagreeing about Airbnbs, because it's getting to be where there's getting to be too many of them. The neighborhoods are being taken away. And so, but what I'm saying is, building inspector, fire marshal, all these things had to be done before I could open up an Airbnb, before I could open up a B&B. Plus, I had to live on the property. The difference now is Airbnb, you don't have to live on the property. But I've seen some changes for the good and for the other. Also, when we had property over there in Oak Point, I came down to use the pool. That's when the other pool had a dome on it. You showed them your pass. You didn't pay a fee to get in it. Now, everywhere you go, as a property owner, plus the $819 I'm paying, which I like to know where some of it goes, but it certainly isn't for maintaining a lot of the areas. Now you go to the pool, you have to pay, I think it's free for it as if you own property. No, I think you pay for that too. And then you pay for a guest. And it's like, now that there's so much more money being brought in, why is everything's extra? And it never did not start out that way. And I know as a fact, I know people
that's a district issue, not a city issue.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah,
I'm just venting what's been on my mind for a couple of years. They might read about me in the paper tomorrow, that somebody cut my throat. But at least I got it out.
But, just one parting comment on the Airbnbs and the VRBOs and stuff like that. What I've been telling everybody, based on my limited understanding of the current state of the law in Arkansas, which says you cannot prohibit it, even if it's prohibited in a unit covenant. I've been telling everybody that we're going to allow it, but regulate it so that it's done responsibly. And we're a long ways away from having those regulations drafted yet. But, when, in its final form, those regulations will deal with things like on-street parking and stuff like that, it's
Noise, crowding, parking,
number of people per.
sanitation.
Number of people per bedroom or whatever that can be, that can
Depending on the
occupy.
size, our sanitation code should require maybe a dumpster, and you don't want to have those.
Well,
And we discussed a related issue, of course, is that in Holiday Island right now, the revenue is based totally on turnback funds, which are based on the number of resident citizens.
permanent residents.
Or permanent residents. A VRBO may not have a permanent resident, so there's no city revenue coming from that property. It's probably those properties probably have increased expenses for police protection and fire protection, such as the fire at Table Rock Landing 2 years ago. Now, at least they are paying district assessments, and the district is right now paying for the sheriff and providing the fire protection, but
So the cost of a business license or, should perhaps reflect in this revenue for not having the other style of residence.
correct, be my thought.
We're gonna try and, everything will be set.
Okay, so Jerry's gonna take on business licensing, that we can move on to economic development. The first thing I put on the list was for me to finally do something with resolution 2021-021, establishing a economic development task force. I need to do that this year.
Is the BBR regulation, is Jerry taking care of that too?
In what?
Is he, are you rolling the BBR over?
Well, I think that was.
The VRBOs are, I mean, that's all gonna be under zoning.
Okay, so I'm not gonna concentrate on that,
Right.
just strictly business, all right.
Okay, then somebody needs to look at the taxes.
Well, the taxing, that comes with establishing an A&P commission. An A&P commission, advertising and promotion commission,
And that would be their source of revenue.
right. Their money would go toward
So
advertising.
we haven't decided what we're gonna do with that.
So the tax dollars that you get from hotels and motels really doesn't add anything much to the city revenue.
Well, it takes,
It's in and out,
it takes
The
the expense off.
license,
but the license definitely could.
But
yes.
it-
Sir, can I just say, I'm just curious about one other thing, because you mentioned this zoning. The street that I live on across the street, it's marked as, I understand it's a commercial. The reason it was commercial is the Holiday Island office used to be there, the police department, a laundromat at the end. Everything over there now is residential. And we are still zoned as commercial, so we're paying the commercial paved road fee instead of residential R. I talked to a gentleman, I don't remember his name, but he's in this building at the other end, and he said there was absolutely nothing marked as commercial. But when you get your printout for the year and you can make your payments of 4 payments a year, right in my column, got commercial. So he doesn't know what he's talking about. So
That's not so nice.
Again,
I probably know some things about Holiday Island a lot of people don't know, but
there's so many problems with the current coding and assessments that, and until they get
Now,
statutes changed.
we're not here to talk about HICID problems, that's,
so that's something totally separate.
That's totally separate.
yeah.
So this is what, planning committee?
This
Like you were
is,
saying?
this
City
is the
council.
city,
Council.
Oh, council.
this is the city, this is the workshop for the city council.
That's it.
But are we gonna wait and see what we do with the licensing and see what we do with staff there? All right, go.
Okay, that's enough.
Go over there and talk to those folks, we've been trying to.
Okay.
They're not listening very well.
Who's
Yeah,
the
I
sheriff,
did-
who's the sheriff department now? I'm just curious. I mean, you mentioned we don't really have one.
Carroll County.
Carroll County?
I forgot what the sheriff's name is, Ross, isn't it?
Yes.
Like there was a murder on Holiday Island not too long ago where some young guy
Saw that,
stabbed his dad.
yeah.
What sheriff department went to that?
Carroll County,
Because there was like 25 cars over there.
that's our only sheriff, or police out here. Carroll County.
What's the one up there, what's the police department up there by Sunfest and all that?
It's a
That's-
Carroll County office.
That's a substation of the Carroll County
We
Sheriff.
were talking about, families, security, that's not really.
On those major crimes, the state police sends investigators in as well.
I'm done.
We might want to call the sheriff. State police now on missing documents.
This, short-term rentals coming up and taxing is coming up again under economic development. That might be a good place for it because, you know, like it or not, tourism is probably the number one,
Business in Holiday Island.
yeah, economic, opportunity for Holiday Island.
Well, it brings a lot of people into Holiday Island.
And
And I don't know how many I know that originally came to Holiday Island because of timeshares. That's us.
So I don't think we need to talk about whether or not economic development needs to be on the priority list. It was on last year already, I just didn't do anything with it, so I will try to get, some volunteers to work on that. Up until now, Jerry's been doing everything that's been done.
But with regard to VRBO regulation, aren't we gonna be looking at writing a separate ordinance for that?
I don't know the answer to that.
The only reason I mention it is because it seems like most of the cities have
Okay.
addressed it in a specific ordinance.
rather than rolling everything having to do with them,
Well, it could,
rather
I
than,
mean, it gets into zoning with uses and where they can be, but it also gets into there because you have to have the safety inspections, you have to have, you have to specify business licenses. These ordinances specify how many people per bedroom.
Yeah.
Those kinds of things, or some ordinances specify you can only have a certain density per, whatever measure you measure population by.
that, you know, that special regulation or special ordinance you're talking about has to go somewhere in the
And
municipal
It
code, and
does.
it'll
They
go
all-
under
actually,
zoning.
the one that Fayetteville wrote, they actually do their ordinances by attaching where they're gonna put it in the code to the back of the
Yeah.
front page.
Yeah.
Back to the whereas page.
Yeah. Okay, long-range planning with the district. I don't know how we would, go about doing that, but, well, I don't know if we have time to worry about that this year, or if our plate is
I
full
don't
enough.
think we have an alternative not to.
Can I suggest an approach?
Huh?
Can I suggest an approach?
Sure.
Because I didn't think the meeting we had worked out really well last year, with everybody in the same room together. I was thinking if we had a meeting of the council and discussed things that we needed to work on together with HICID, and got our thoughts written down on that or specified in the minutes, then HICID maybe has a meeting and they discuss the same things, look at what we thought and make their comments and or amendments to it in their meeting. We can attend each other's meetings, nothing says we can't, but we're not the principal discussion people. And then you kind of go back and forth, 1 or 2 meetings each, and come out with a plan.
What kinds of things do you think would be, in that plan, or part of that?
Getting together on the sheriff's contract, maybe one.
Number one,
Getting together on how you're gonna do roads, number 2. Other things along those lines.
financing.
What do you mean by financing?
Well, we went into one of the major tenets or processes behind our draft incorporation was to reduce the assessment so that they stay within the constraints, that it would be self-sustaining rather than going broke in 10 years.
Unfortunately, we don't have a say in how they do
And
the
they have
assessment.
lost sight of that because they raised them this year.
I don't know how on the same page except to lay out the pros and cons is.
Well, you know, I hate to get into a confrontational mode, but I think we're damn near there.
I don't agree that we're there.
Well,
What,
they're not listening at all.
uh,
And
we're
they,
not running the district.
and they say that we don't tell them what we're doing. Well, you know, they make no attempt to come and see what we're doing.
Maybe some of us need to go to their meetings and
I-
stand in
I went to
and make
the last-
comment.
I go to most of them. But they have, it's not reciprocal. Okay? And, you know, I understand that, you know, they have control of most things.
So do you have an idea on how to get past that?
I've been trying. And I've been talking to one of the commissioners, and he said he broached, you know, the dual meetings, and that nobody's interested in it, so.
Well,
That was
that's
evident,
fine.
the one that we did have, I mean, that was.
Well, we didn't go in,
That was a sorry.
we didn't go in on equal footing either, so. I mean, I sent you that thing that Kevin Crossan wrote in 2005 when we were, you know, the Board of Commissioners at that time requested the district manager to draw up a plan for, you know, dual operation, and one of the things he said in there was, you know, have, set dual meetings. Did I send that to everybody or not? I just sent it to him.
No.
I don't know, can I send that to everybody or not?
You sent it to me, or you gave me a copy of it.
I think it's time for a frank conversation. You know, are we in this together, or are we gonna go?
No. I don't share your opinion that it's
Well,
that bad between us and the district. There's a couple of things that they did, or one thing they did in their budgeting process that we didn't agree with. That doesn't mean that the door is closed between us and the district. It's a long ways from that.
Well,
So,
they don't have the same vision that I've got, okay? And that's not I mean, that's not, doesn't have to be exclusive, I mean, you know, excluding anybody. I just, you know, I thought, you know, that that's what we were gonna do, and we were gonna try to supplement with our funds, their operational costs, so that we could reduce that, and I don't see that happening. It seems like it just, oh boy, we got more money.
Well, one of the things you have to remember too, is that just like us, they are not of one mind. Everybody on that board has opinions about every subject that comes up, and they aren't always the same, just like us. So to
If we
get
don't,
everybody on the same page or make the board do anything, it's kind of,
but we
it has
need,
to be discussed in public and.
I think we need long-range goals, or who's gonna do what, who, and how we're gonna get there.
That's why I suggested we decide on what our long-range goals are, or what we think they should be, then we throw it to High Sid and let them mull it over and discuss it a while and mark it up, and then it comes back to us, and then maybe you
I have no problem with
can agree on something in the end.
I have no problem with that. We could, you know, everybody come up with what they think, and then come together and have a meeting and come up with what we show to them.
But it should be the property owners thing too.
But that, you know, I think Kevin's thing was, he said a three-year plan. And I don't know whether we would wanna go further than that, or. But I mean, at some point in time, they've got to realize that, you know, some of the stuff they're doing is gonna go away. And it will become part of the city. And right now, I don't see that.
Well, they need about a 10-year plan, if you ask me. They need a long-term plan on how they survive or don't survive as a high sit.
Well, and we need one too, as what we're, how we're going to progress, because at some point in time, we're going to have to take some revenue, and if it's not offset by a reduction in the assessment, like we all thought where we were going, ain't gonna work. And we all spent a lot of time on that process.
Well,
But I would,
I don't disagree that long-range planning is necessary. I'm not sure that we're far enough through the short-range things that need to be done.
Yeah, just getting the city
Yeah.
functional.
This, long-range planning may be something we start to do next year, and after the city is up and running.
I was talking more specifically about the long-range plan that HICID needs.
Yeah.
To survive, and they need to be thinking how they're gonna get there.
ain't looking there.
All right, I'm gonna scratch that from the 2022,
Well, I still think
Scratch
we need.
which, long-range plan?
yeah, the long-range planning, because I just don't see us.
How about short-range planning?
We have a short-range plan. We have a budget, they have a budget.
Well, when it comes to next year, when we, when we get that straightened out, when we talk to the sheriff.
Ken, you wanted workspace for building inspector and code enforcement officer added to the list. I think what we have is adequate for now.
Okay. You and Wes, you think you can work them? And there, you have another desk in there, and,
I gotta get rid of the cabinet that broke in two when we were trying to move it in there.
have a fire sale.
Get a builder in there just to put it back
Not a
together,
fire
just
sale,
like
it's a
this.
fire.
It ain't worth it. It ain't worth it. I should have went with my first hunch. I didn't want it in the first place when I figured, let's take it.
Yeah, I didn't think
When
I
it
thought
broke
we
in two, I'm trying to carry
I
out.
thought we were gonna have to put it in a wheelbarrow to get it out of the building.
I think what we have is perfectly functional.
All right.
Did you get some IT equipment from them too?
We got a
Two
computer
printers and two printers,
and
one
two
computer,
printers.
one computer, two printers. We need to have computer have come over and revamp that computer, see if it's working.
Well, it works, I know.
Well, if it works, and
I don't
we're
know
gonna
if it
use
can
it, it
be-
needs to have all the protected software on it, so it's like.
I mean, as far as it working, I was on it today, but, all that's on it right now is just some really basic files.
And the desktop. The desktop.
And, but it does need to be tied into the printers and all that kind of stuff.
You want me to get somebody over here to?
Yeah, you might wanna start by just getting the model number of the computer and ask him if it's worth investing in, or,
Okay,
I mean, if it's, 20 years old,
yeah, just get the basic info
Yeah.
about the computer.
yeah.
The ad, by the way, was in the Carroll County News yesterday.
Yeah, and I am getting emails from interested parties. Ken, I think this is another one you wanted on here, additional sources of funding and grants.
I don't, we did some research a long time ago, but I think we need to look. I would be willing to just start reviewing, some of the cities and see where some of their additional revenue sources are. See if it,
Municipal League has been having regular training classes on that very subject, and, I haven't had time to sit in on any of it.
Well, I can do that. I'd be willing to do that.
Sure.
And the same thing, there's a lot of additional grants out there, you know, like sidewalks and trails and just all kinds of things, and I was
No, you
wondering.
didn't just say sidewalks.
It was
Well,
in the
there are.
last one they talked about.
And when I was on the board, I always was trying to figure out how the hell we could put a sidewalk down Holiday Island Drive without getting people killed by errant golfers. Of course, my balls were right down the wall.
Yeah,
You'd have
50
to-
yards.
you'd have to cut into some yards of some of those people living on Holiday Island.
Yeah, I don't have a yard. What are you talking about?
Anyway, but I
My
mean.
yard's smaller than his.
I mean, there's just all kinds of
What the
different
hell did you have for breakfast this morning?
When's the next election?
Cheerios. It makes me cheery.
You don't want a sidewalk.
It would be fantastic if we had a bike lane, walking lane, or sidewalks,
But
not just on Holiday Island Drive, but on Shields and several other streets, but.
there's, you know, last year, you know, I put, you know,
That's the
when we,
long-term planning.
when we dedicated the fishing pier down there, the Senator, the Representative King was there, and he said, I'll get this paid for you, and then I kept bugging people, and Lawrence supposedly got the grant to pay that, and it still ain't happened. I don't know what happened to
I
it.
don't think he actually got the grant, I think he had to resubmit for it.
But there's, you know, but there's just all kinds of different grants from different areas.
Yeah.
And I thought about you know, Shar said Shar Taylor said that, you know, she would be willing to write, would it be all right if we talked to Shar about researching, or do you?
I think, you know, I guess my gut reaction is, I don't wanna go out fishing for grant money and then looking for something to spend that grant money on. I think we should start out with a need and then see if there's grant money that we have to pay for it.
Well, that's one thing that once he gets the, Economic Development Task Force, appointed, that's one of the goals that ordinance or resolution we passed, was that they look for grants.
Okay.
Determine needs and look for grants.
I mean,
And I mean, I've sat in on, two, municipal league grant, I don't know what you call them, webinars. So, I mean, we're looking.
One of the things, you know, I've been sitting in on a lot of those seminars myself, and read that last email blast about the sidewalk, that had the sidewalk grant in it.
well, I didn't see that.
Oh, I thought that's what you were talking about. That was just out last week, or maybe Monday, maybe Friday or Monday. Anyway, they got so much money floating around right now.
I know, they're just,
I mean, there's just bukus of money, but you have to fit into these little niches apparently.
but we
There
don't
was
know.
there was some webinar they had yesterday, I didn't get
That
to
was
listen to.
suspended rescue money, I think.
It was,
Yeah, I
and it
mean,
was,
we
they had opened up the rules where you didn't have to follow any of the initial thoughts.
Yes, and that was all relative to money that we don't have,
That right, it was
Yeah.
given- money that was
Because we
given to the
didn't
cities,
qualify.
right.
because we weren't incorporated in
Except a
time.
lot of that money, you know, went to states and everything that they're trying to get rid of too.
Well,
And they may be giving grants on it too.
they are, I mean, those two, broadband grants that we're in as part of that money. We're in two because they changed the rules on the first one, when we got more money, and they decided they need to, hire a $2 million,
Well, they got it.
contractor, to dole that money out, which
Right.
delayed.
It's making a lot of money.
delayed getting that first money, and they're now looking at an April or May timeframe before
But
you
we also had, a lot of that money is going to these federal agencies, which is what the point of that recent email that came out earlier this week, where they were listing this grant opportunity, and they were having a webinar maybe today or yesterday about it. And, you know, if we wait to define projects until, and then look for grant money, we may be waiting forever. Whereas if we had someone out there who had the time to actively look at where this grant money is and go to some of these federal agencies that are giving away money, and even maybe the state, and find out, go to these sources that are, you know, being advertised at least by the municipal league, and look for what grant opportunities are out there, it would help us formulate ideas about projects that could provide value to Holiday Island.
Well, you know, that
But I don't know that any of us, I know I don't have the time to do it.
Well, that was, again, that was one of the emphases on the task force, is people to volunteer to do that.
So I was wondering, maybe could the city ask for volunteers? Maybe Charlotte would devote some time to researching what opportunities are out there and investigating, you know, whether that could be a need at Holiday Island that we could fill or not. Or could somebody else maybe want to volunteer to help our city do that? Is that a possibility?
what time frame are we looking at for this task force?
Well, it's, at least, at best, it's third on the list after getting zoning and health and sanitation.
I think your point is well taken, but,
Most of the projects that they're talking about at the municipal league, that this rescue plan act money is being doled out for, and you're right, it's billions and billions of dollars, but most of it has to be shovel-ready projects, and they have to be targeted towards sewer, water, not roads. What are the broadband was one of
These
them.
that they were talking about in this note earlier this week were for law enforcement and fire department personnel, things like that.
As far as recouping money for
And the
personnel.
money came from the Justice Department.
I know, but if it's part of that rescue money, we didn't have any loss.
Oh, and they've taken that rule out of the picture
So that-
altogether, yeah.
But we
Probably
don't,
spending it on all kinds of foolish things, who knows? Just to get
Boy, I
money.
could get in on that. I like foolish things.
the fact that the city is very limited in the scope of what they do right now also excludes us from a lot of those grant opportunities.
Right.
All that
Yeah.
money that they're doling out to police departments, we don't have a
We don't
police
have one, I
department.
know. We have a fire department.
And a lot of them, Linda, are matching. I mean,
Yep, there is the matching component on many of them.
on many of them, and, I mean,
The district is still working with ESI to try to get $7 million if we can get it.
And there was some
Replace
trail
all the
money
4-inch
available in
water
something I
lines.
read this week too.
Was that?
Trail money was available and they were looking to do new grants for this year.
What about that sewer debt that Holiday Island's paying off? The grant
You can't retire debt with the, any of that COVID money.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, you know, I would think it would be helpful if we had a
Some
person
idea.
volunteering with the city that could be kind of overall looking at grants all
Well,
the
when
time.
I start looking for volunteers to be on the Economic Development Task Force, I'll see if there's somebody
That'd be good,
that's,
works for me.
that.
You said wait till we have a need, but, you know, I think we ought to be looking at it, see what's out there too.
well, I think it behooves us to get as many people involved, whether it's a task force or
Chain gang.
whatever, just to get more opinions than just ours. And,
So that'd be a great idea for the economic task force. I agree with that.
Okay,
I agree with that too, Lynn.
anything else that we should, put on the list of things that we need to tackle this year?
I don't know, I went back and looked at the one you had for the second half, and I thought, we got most of them, I think. That was where it pretty much came up with these others. Even if we don't get the district to develop, participate in the long range, I think we need to be looking at where we wanna be in 3 to 5 years.
I don't disagree. But right now, we're.
Trying to get through next month? Well, we got this big staff, I mean, we might as well use it.
All right, anything else? Anything from the,
You got done with this in record time.
I figured we'd be here and have to order in supper.
No.
all right, if there's nothing else, I'm going to adjourn the workshop. And I'll, there will be minutes of this, but I'll try to summarize my thoughts on it too.
I sent you an email. Everybody needs to get the statements, financial interest.
78